In 1927, a massive federal raid put a large quantity of Innsmouth residents into federal internment camps. Part of the town and surrounding reef were supposedly blown up. There had been stories of strange people in Innsmouth for years, but the tale of one poor visitor pushed it over the edge, and a secret investigation revealed the true terrors of the town. A young man touring New England as a rite of passage was travelling to Arkham, but the cheapest route involved a bus through Innsmouth. And despite warnings, he decided to go. The bus broke down and he had to stay overnight, finding only horror and terror, causing him to flee down a disused railway track. But worse was to come when he discovered his true lineage. All in The Shadow over Innsmouth by H.P. Lovecraft. Link to part 1 above. To help us grow, please like, subscribe, and be sure to click the bell. But just as importantly, comment and share. The algorithm must be fed, and comments are one of its favourite meals. You might want to help guide our explorations of the strange, dark and terrible by joining the Eldritch Order on Discord. You can via our Patreon or YouTube, coming soon. We release 3 episodes a week, 2 live streams that chat guides the story on, and complete versions when a story concludes. In part 6, Escaping the Hotel, the traveller finds that the streets of Innsmouth are no safer. Can he escape? Who is after him and why? Let me know what you think in the comments. But for now, it's time to enter the Cave of Chronicles. For an instant, I felt absolute despair, since my trapping in a chamber with no window egress seemed complete. Then, with a dazed automatism, I made for the connecting door and performed the blind motion of pushing at it in an effort to get through. Sheer fortunate chance gave me my reprieve, for the connecting door before me was not only unlocked, but actually ajar. In a second, I was through and had my right knee and shoulder against a hall door which was visibly opening inward. My pressure took the opener off guard, for the thing shut as I pushed, so that I could slip the well-conditioned bolt as I had done the other door. As I gained this respite, I heard the battering at the 2 other doors abate, while a confused clatter came from the connecting door I had shielded with the bedstead. Evidently, the bulk of my assailants had entered the southerly room and were massing in a lateral attack. But at the same moment, a passkey sounded in the next door to the north, and I knew that a nearer peril was at hand. The northward connecting door was wide open, but there was no time to think about checking the already turning lock in the hall. All I could do was to shut and bolt the open connecting door, as well as its mate on the opposing side, pushing a bedstead against one and a bureau against the other, and moving a washstand in front of the hall door. I saw, trust to such makeshift barriers to shield me till I could get out of the window and onto the roof of the Payne Street block. But even in this acute moment, my chief horror was something apart from the immediate weakness of my defences. I was shuddering because not one of my pursuers, despite some hideous pantings, gruntings and subdued barkings at odd intervals, was uttering an intelligible vocal sound. As I moved the furniture and rushed towards the windows, I heard a frightful scurrying along the corridor towards the room north of me, and perceived that the southward battering had ceased. Plainly, most of my opponents were about to concentrate against the feeble connecting door, which they knew must open directly onto me. Outside, the moon played on the ridgepole of the block below, and I saw that the jump would be desperately hazardous because of the steep surface on which I must land. The clatter at the northerly connecting door was now terrific, and I saw that the weak panelling was beginning to splinter. Obviously, the besiegers had brought some ponderous object into play as a battering ram. The bedstead, however, still held firm, so that I at least had a faint chance of making good my escape. As I opened the window, I noticed that it was flanked by heavy velour draperies suspended from a pole by brass rings, and also that there was a large projecting catch for the shutters on the exterior. Seeing a possible means of avoiding the dangerous jump, I yanked at the hangings and brought them down, pole and all, then quickly hooking two of the rings in the shutter catch and flinging the drapery outside. The heavy folds reached fully to the abutting roof, and I saw that the rings and catch would likely bear my weight. So, climbing out of the window and down the improvised rope ladder, I left behind me forever the morbid and horror-infested fabric of the Gilman House. I landed safely on the loose slates of the steep roof and succeeded in gaining the gaping black skylight without a slip. The place inside was ghoulish looking, but I was past minding such impressions and made at once for the staircase revealed by my flashlight. After a hasty glance at my watch, which showed the hour to be 2 a.m. The steps creaked but seemed tolerably sound, and I raced down past a barn-like second story to the ground floor. The desolation was complete, and only echoes answered my footfalls. The hallway inside was black, and when I reached the opposite end, I saw that the street door was wedged immovably shut. Resolved to try another building, I groped my way toward the courtyard, but stopped short when close to the doorway. For out of an opened door in the Gilman House, a large crowd of doubtful shapes was pouring, lanterns bobbing in the darkness, and horrible croaking voices exchanging low cries in what was certainly not English. Their features were indistinguishable, but their crouching, shambling gait was abominably repellent. And worst of all, I perceived that one figure was strangely robed and unmistakably surmounted by a tall tiara of a design altogether too familiar. Again, groping toward the street, I opened a door off the hall and came upon an empty room with closely shuttered but sashless windows. Fumbling in the rays of my flashlight, I found I could open the shutters, and in another moment I had climbed outside and was carefully closing the aperture in its original manner. I walked rapidly, softly, and close to the ruined houses. At Bas Street, I drew into a yawning vestibule, while two shambling figures crossed in front of me, but was soon on my way again and approaching the open space where Elliott Street obliquely crosses Washington at the intersection of South. Though I had never seen this space, it had looked dangerous to me on the grocery youth's map, since the Moonlight would have free play there. There was no use trying to evade it, for any alternative course would involve detours of possibly disastrous visibility and delaying effect. The only thing to do was to cross it boldly and openly, imitating the typical shamble of the Innsmouth folk as best I could, and trusting that no one, or at least no pursuer of mine, would be there. Just how fully the pursuit was organised, and indeed just what its purpose might be, I could form no idea. There seemed to be unusual activity in the town, but I judged that the news of my escape from the Gilman had not yet spread. The open space was, as I expected, strongly moonlit, but my progress was unimpeded, and no fresh sound arose to hint that I had been spied. Glancing about me, I involuntarily let my pace slacken for a second to take in the sight of the sea, gorgeous in the burning moonlight at the street's end. Far out beyond the breakwater was the dim, dark line of Devil Reef. Then, without warning, I saw the intermittent flashes of light on the distant reef. My muscles tightened for panic flight, held in only by certain unconscious caution and half hypnotic fascination. And to make matters worse, there now flashed forth from the lofty cupola of the Gilman House, which loomed up in the northeast behind me, a series of analogous, though differently spaced gleams, which could be nothing less than an answering signal. I now bent to the left around the ruinous green, still gazing towards the ocean as it blazed in the spectral summer moonlight, and watching the cryptical flashes of those nameless, unexplainable beacons. It was then that the most horrible impression of all was borne in upon me. The impression which destroyed my last vestige of self-control and sent me running frantically southward past the yawning blank doorways and fishily staring windows of that deserted nightmare street. For, at a closer glance, I saw that the moonlit waters between the reef and the shore were far from empty. They were alive with a teeming horde of shapes swimming inward toward the town. My frantic running ceased before I had covered a block, for at my left I began to hear something like the hue and cry of organised pursuit. There were footsteps and guttural sounds, and a rattling motor wheezed south along Federal Street. In a second, all my plans were utterly changed, for if the southward highway were blocked ahead of me, I must clearly find another ingress from Innsmouth. I paused and drew into a gaping doorway, reflecting how lucky I was to have left the moonlit open space before these pursuers came down the parallel street. Then I thought of the abandoned railway to Rowley, whose solid line of ballasted weed-grown earth still stretched off to the northwest from the crumbling station on the edge of the river gorge. There was just a chance that the townsfolk would not think of that. Drawing inside the hall of my deserted shelter, I once more consulted the grocery boy's map with the aid of the flashlight. The immediate problem was how to reach the ancient railway, and I now saw that the safest course was a head to Babson Street, then west to Lafayette, there edging around but not crossing an open space homologous to the one I had traversed, and subsequently back northward and westward in a zigzagging line through Lafayette, Bates, Adams and Bank Streets, the latter skirting the river gorge to the abandoned and dilapidated station I had seen from my window. My reason for going ahead to Babson was that I wished neither to recross the earlier open space, nor to begin my westward course along a cross street as broad as south. I crossed the street to the right-hand side in order to edge around into Babson as inconspicuously as possible. In Babson Street, I clung as closely as possible to the sagging, uneven buildings, twice pausing in the doorway as the noises behind me momentarily increased. The open space ahead shone wide and desolate under the moon, but my route would not force me to cross it. During my second pause, I began to detect a fresh distribution of the vague sounds, and upon looking cautiously out from cover behind a motor car darting across the open space bound outward along Elliott Street. As I watched, choked by a sudden rise in the fishy odour after a short abatement, I saw a band of uncouth, crouching shapes loping and shambling in the same direction. I knew that this must be the party guarding the Ipswich Road, since the highway forms an extension of Elliott Street. Two of the figures I glimpsed were in voluminous robes, and one wore a peaked diadem which glistened whitely in the moonlight. The gait of this figure was so odd it sent a chill through me, for it seemed to me the creature was almost hopping. When the last of the band was out of sight, I resumed my progress, darting around the corner into Lafayette Street and crossing Elliott very hurriedly, lest stragglers of the party be still advancing along that thoroughfare. I did hear some croaking and clattering sounds far off toward Town Square, but accomplished the passage without disaster. My greatest dread was in recrossing broad and moonlit South Street, with its seaward view, and I had to nerve myself for the ordeal. Someone might easily be looking, and possible Elliott Street stragglers could not fail to glimpse me from either of 2 points. At the last moment, I decided I had better slacken my trot and make the crossing as before in the shambling gait of an average Innsmouth native. So ends part 6 of The Shadow over Innsmouth. In part 7, the traveller continued to try and find an exit from the town, only to discover that he is being hunted by more than just humans. Don't forget to tell me what you think is happening in the comments. The most deserving comment will be pinned to the top. If you enjoyed the tale, it helps us if you let others know, so please click the like button and share with others that may be interested. Subscribing will let you travel with us on further adventures of the dark and terrible, with the bell notifying you as we set off. If you want to join our Eldritch Order on Discord, come visit us on Patreon or YouTube, coming soon. Then you can join in the discussions and even help guide the choice of stories. There is an ever-growing list of insane benefits. See the description for details of the Patreon and for a link to Canje Studios to find out how modern board games can help you create your own dark and terrible stories. Until next time, farewell. Though, take care, as in the shadows, where fear festers and hope fades, the relentless pursuit of the hunter turns every heartbeat into a countdown to despair.